Phantom objects. Imagine putting your keys on the kitchen counter, stepping away for just a moment, and upon returning, they are nowhere to be seen. You begin searching frantically, checking every possible spot, under cushions, inside drawers, even places you know you could not have left them. Then, hours or even days later, the object reappears in the strangest place, tucked in a corner, sitting on a shelf, or somewhere utterly illogical. These occurrences can feel deeply puzzling. Often they start with frustration and confusion. How could an item you were certain was in one place suddenly vanish? And when the object is eventually found, it adds another layer of mystery, especially if the location seems impossible. While many brush these moments off as forgetfulness, others believe there is something more unusual at play. From a psychological perspective, disappearing objects can be explained as lapses in attention or memory. Our brains are not perfect recording devices. They tend to fill in gaps and create assumptions. For example, you might remember placing your phone on a counter, but in reality, you absent-mindedly moved it to your bag or a nearby chair. Stress, multitasking, or distractions further increase the likelihood of such memory errors. These natural brain quirks can make it feel like an object disappeared, when in truth, it was simply misplaced. Deja Visite. Have you ever had one of those memories that feels absolutely real? Like you can still picture every detail of a place you visited, only to later discover it never actually existed. A park, filled with tall trees, a rusty slide, squeaky swings, and the laughter of children echoing through the air. The memory feels so real, tied to specific sights, sounds, and smells, that you can picture every detail clearly. But then, when you ask your parents about it, they tell you that no such park ever existed near your home. You're left puzzled, questioning how such a vivid memory could be false. It might be a mix of dreams, imagination, or fragments of real experiences blended together by your mind over time. Predicted dreams. You're walking through a quiet forest, sunlight flickering between the leaves. The air smells like rain and earth. Suddenly, you see a red door standing alone among the trees. It feels important, but you don't know why. You open it and wake up. The next week, you're in a new part of town. There, between two old buildings, is the same red door. Your heart jumps. You've seen this before. But how? This is a predictive dream. A dream that shows you something before it happens in real life. Situational familiarity. You walk into a room, and without even thinking, you know exactly where the thing you're looking for is, even though you've never consciously seen it there before. Perhaps it's your car keys sitting under a pile of books, or an item you swore was misplaced long ago. There's no logical explanation for how you knew this. It simply came to you, as though your mind tapped into some hidden reserve of understanding. Or maybe you're solving a problem, something as mundane as fixing a leaky faucet or as complex as cracking a puzzle, and suddenly the solution arrives in your mind, perfectly formed. It's not something you've learned or practiced, but the knowledge feels innate. Then there are those moments when you're talking to someone, and as they're about to finish their sentence, you know exactly what they're going to say. Not because it's predictable, but because it feels as if you've heard it before, even though it's the first time. Deja Rencontre. You're walking down the street and see someone passing by. As you glance at them, a strange feeling hits you. They look so familiar. You feel certain you've met them before. Their face, their expression, and even the way they walk remind you of someone. But when you think about it, you can't figure out who they are or where you might have met them. It feels confusing because the feeling is so strong, but there's no memory to go with it. Later, the same thing happens again, but this time, it's at a coffee shop. The person handing you your drink feels like someone you know. You feel the pull of recognition, but you still can't explain it. Sometimes this feeling stays with you for a while. You might even start questioning if your memory is wrong, like maybe you forgot meeting them. Or you wonder if your mind is playing tricks, making someone new seem familiar. Whatever the reason, the feeling is hard to shake. Maybe it's because of how someone looks or acts, or maybe it's just a coincidence. But the experience can feel very real and leave you wondering why it happens. Optical illusions. There are three main types of optical illusions. Literal illusions. These are images where you see something that isn't actually there. For example, this drawing might look like two horses and some birds at first, but upon closer inspection you can also see them forming a woman's face. Physiological illusions. These are caused by the way our eyes and brains react to certain patterns, like bright colors or repeated shapes. Now stare at the spiral. and you will feel as if it is moving even though it isn't. That's a physiological illusion. Cognitive illusions. These are the most mind-boggling because they rely on how our brain interprets the scene. An example is the famous impossible triangle. The impossible triangle, also called the Penrose triangle, is a famous optical illusion that challenges our understanding of geometry and perspective. It was first created by Swedish artist Oscar Reuterswärd in 1934 and later popularized in the 1950s by Lionel Penrose and his son Roger Penrose, who described it as impossibility in its purest form. The triangle appears to be made of three beams that meet at right angles, forming a continuous loop. However, this is only possible in a two-dimensional drawing. In three-dimensional space, such a shape cannot exist because the connections between the beams are geometrically impossible. The Müller-Lyer illusion. The Müller-Lyer illusion demonstrates a fascinating optical illusion where two lines of the same length appear to be of different lengths due to the shapes at their ends. It was created by Franz Karl Müller-Lyer in 1889. In the classic version, one line has arrowheads pointing inward, while the other has arrowheads pointing outward. The line with outward-pointing arrowheads looks longer, even though both lines are exactly the same length. The checker shadow illusion. The checker shadow illusion is a trick that plays with how our eyes and brain work. It shows a checkerboard with a shadow over it. On the board, there are two squares labeled A and B. Square A looks darker, and square B looks lighter. But here's the catch. They are actually the same color. Our brain gets fooled because it sees the shadow and assumes square B must be lighter to stand out. It's how our brain tries to make sense of light and shadows in the real world. This illusion shows that sometimes what we see isn't exactly what's true. You can test this by covering the shadow and comparing the two squares. They will look the same. Cool, right? The Rubin vase. The Rubin vase is an image that can look like two different things depending on how you see it. At first, it might look like a white vase in the middle, but if you focus on the black shapes, it can look like two faces staring at each other. This happens because your brain switches between seeing the white part as the main object and the black part as the background, or vice versa. It is a fun example of how our minds can see the same picture in different ways. Try it yourself. Look closely and see if you can spot both the vase and the faces. It's like a magic trick for your eyes.